Alright, so now let's continue, and now we need to write rules for the create method. So this one will be pretty interesting as we're going to explore more about the rules, different possibilities, and how to ensure everything is exactly how it is supposed to be. And I can assure you that by the end of it, you will be very confident in writing rules. So for the first part, for the create thing, it's going to be the same thing, that it has to be the owner, and for that we just need to call the isOwner function as such. Now along with this, there will be few other checks, but before that, as you know that Cloud Firestore, it's a no SQL database, it's schemaless, which essentially means that it's not required for all the documents within a collection to follow the same pattern, or to say to have the same structure, which basically means that as this document, the link document, is being added from the user's end to their sub collection, it is possible by default that they can forge the data. They can pass in something that we do not expect. Like for example, they can pass in any other field than what we have over here, than these fives, or they can exclude any of these fields. Or the other thing would be that they can change the value. Like for example, this created art that we have over here, as we know that it's a timestamp, but we need to make sure that it is actually the value which is being passed down from the user. We want to make sure that it's the timestamp data type plus it's the current time. That's one thing. We actually discussed all this thing. The point is we will be writing the rules in order to validate the data coming from the user's end. So let's do that. So for the first part, it's going to be something like we want to make sure no more, no less than these five fields that we have. So for this, let's write a function, and we can name it as verify required fields as such. I think it's way cleaner if we write in a function instead of writing the conditions right over here. So the other thing to keep in mind is no matter how complex the conditions are, the rules are, in the end it all boils down to a single boolean value which states whether or not that operation should be allowed. So over here, let's return the conditions. So for this, we will be making use of the request variable once again, within which we have resource.data. Now it's important to understand what this is. So first of all, it's an object, and this object represents the future state of the document, which will be like if the operation is allowed. So if that didn't make any sense, for now you can just assume that this is the incoming data, as we will be using this for the create method. So this thing is the incoming data, and in fact what we can do is we can shift this to a variable, which is possible as per the new releases of the Firestore security rules. So it's possible to create a variable like this, and we can name it as incoming data, something like this. And we will be getting back to this thing once we write the update rules, because I think then it's going to make more sense like what exactly it is. But for now you can assume that it's the incoming data. So now this is an object, or to say it's a map, and as we know that within the security rules of Firestore, we have different data types, and if we just open the official docs, we will be finding all the different types. And let's just take a look at the map, which is the data type for this thing, this variable. So this is a map, or to say an object, a key value mapping, and on this data type there are few methods, or to say different functions. Among them there is keys. So this is pretty similar to what we have in JavaScript. So I will be opening the console in order to explain it much better. So for instance, if you have an object, something like this, which let's name it as such. So it's an object with two properties. In order to get the keys out of it, we can use the object dot keys and pass in the object as such, which returns back an array containing all the keys. So this thing is the same as what we have over here, the keys method. So we just need to call, this is the incoming data, we need to call the keys method as such, and this will return back a list. A list and array are kind of the same, it's just the term, so you can assume that to be the same thing. So now this will be the list containing the fields of like all the fields which are being passed down from the user, which means a list of all the fields coming from the user. Now that it is a list, we can also check the list data type, and we can see different functions, among which we will be finding the has all, which kind of speak for itself. It's pretty descriptive. So it returns back a boolean value stating whether the prior list contains all the elements that we have within the list that we pass in as an argument. So using this, we can make sure that the user is passing in all the required fields that we have. So we first need to create a list as well. Let's do that, and let's again create a variable for it, which we can name as required fields, which will be a list. And now we just need to place all these fields within this list. Let's do that. Make sure that there is no typo. Then we have long URL. Then we have the name, shortcode, and the total clicks, just the fields as such. Now that we have this thing, we can call the has all method on this list, which is being generated using the keys method, and we can pass in the required fields as such. So just by doing this, if we try to create a document, and we can build up the data by using this button which opens this modal. The limitation with this thing is, which even I don't like, is that once you build up the document, you cannot edit it, which means you would have to create the document again if you're using the simulator. So that's kind of like a limitation, and I think it should be fixed. Anyway, let's add in some data. And for instance, if we just add in a single field as such, which says, so name something like this, and if we try to run this thing, we are trying the create type, which is fine, and we have the same UID as of the path segment. So it means that it is the owner themselves. And if we try running this thing, it should be denied, and in fact it's throwing error running simulation. Let's see what it is. So I think I'm missing, there is a typo. Okay, so I kind of missed the semicolon over here. Now it should be working, I think. Okay, so this thing is actually returning to be like, it's turning out to be true, which should not be the case, obviously, because we are not calling the function. Let's do that over here. And now if we try, well, actually this is the reason why we have the check, because now if we try running the same thing, it should be denied, as you can see. So that's perfect. We kind of unconsciously did the check ourselves. So as you can see, we are trying to run this thing, and it's so good that we have the detailed information, because we can hover on any of this, like these things, and we can see where exactly it went wrong. So this is the has all, and if we take a look, as you can see, it's false. But if we try creating a document, or to say, if we try passing a data or the data for the document with all the fields, then it should be allowed. Let's add anything. We are not validating the value, so it doesn't matter if we enter anything. Total clicks, just make sure that we pass in all the fields within the document. And let's try this thing. What else is left? Name, shortcode, created art. Okay, So now that we have the document which covers kind of all the fields that we are checking for the required thing, now this should work, which is great. So it means that it is working and this thing should be true, which is kind of obvious. So that is great. Now in the same way, we also want to check that only these fields are being passed down. No other field than these what we have. So for that, well, actually let me just build up the document first. It's kind of time consuming. This is the reason why which I don't really prefer using this thing. Okay, I will be writing it real quick. Total clicks. What else? Name, shortcode. What is missing? Long URL. Okay. So now if we pass in any other field along with this one, like for example YOLO, which is something that we are not expecting right now, this request should be allowed because it has all the fields that we are requiring, but we want to limit only to these fields. So for this, just like the has all function that we have, I should zoom in, just like this we have the has only. So this thing, it kind of works in the same way. It takes in a list and it ensures that the prior list contains only those fields which are in the list that we pass in as an argument. So as you can see that using the security rules, we are kind of imposing the schema. We are kind of checking, we are doing the data validation. So in the same way, we will be adding in the double ampersand, and for the first part, it's going to be the same thing. Now it's not possible to chain it up as such. So we have to write everything from starting this thing. But now let's just change the function name to be of has only. So now if we do this thing, let me just save it up as well. And now if we try running the same request, which contains all the fields plus an extra one, which is this thing, and it's not something that we have within the list. So right now this thing should be denied. And the best part is we can see the detailed information over here. The has all should be true because it does have all the fields. However, the has only should be false because it contains an extra one, which is right over here, as you can see. So that is great. Now that we are kind of validating just the fields, we also need to check the values of them. We need to ensure that the values are exactly what we expect. So let's do that as well.